from, let's say, state institutions. I am also be speaking about our experience, how we are trying to implement our legislation, also what we have in place when it comes to elaborated legislation, as well as a IP strategy. I will briefly explain to our colleagues. Also, I am pleased also to welcome here our colleagues from Georgian IP authority, and also we have here a representative of European Commission to Ukraine. Welcome on this session. So colleagues, our task is to identify those gaps where we still have in our, let's say, system in general and in legislation in particular, in terms of, let's say, protection of intellectual property, and especially when it comes to IT cluster, so I would say. So we know that IT is kind of, in our legislation, is copyrighted, so to say. In some countries, it is been considered as industrial property or mixture of copyright and industrial property. But the, let's say, strategic and scientific approach in Ukraine is more focused on considering in IT cluster and IT as a copyright sphere, not industrial design. And as most of you probably know, Ministry of Economic Development and Trade and Agriculture is been working and elaborating our intellectual property strategy. This was supported by World Intellectual Property Organization, and I have to also to tell you that there was already, let's say, attempt to draft, to prepare IP strategy. Unfortunately, it was not successful. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, but now we are on a final stage with and accomplishing this IP strategy. And I would wish to congratulate Dr. Yuri Kapitsa and Dr. Olena Orlyuk, who were the most active and proactive experts in preparing our IP strategy. It is already accomplished, completed. Today we have a final version, so to say. We have submitted it for consideration to our partner, World Intellectual Property Organization, and tomorrow we will have also one of the last public hearings in course of innovation market, which is taking place on our exhibition center. Also invite you to join that discussion tomorrow morning. And now I would wish to give a floor to Dr. Yuri Kapitsa to express your view how this IT sector and IT cluster is reflected in our IP strategy. I know we have paid quite a lot of attention to our, let's say, most successful story of our economy is our IT cluster. So Yuri, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Всіх вітаю. Дійсно, я зараз думаю, як мені продовжувати українською мовою, яку я дуже люблю, чи англійською мовою. Well, so I'll try to tell some words in English, and if it will be so bad, I'll then again start with Ukrainian. Well, so first of all, thank you for this great opportunity to speak on this roundtable. And first of all, I would like to make an accent that if we speak about Eurasia countries, we have two tendencies. One tendency is, first of all, for our dear Georgia colleagues, Ukrainian colleagues, Moldova colleagues, which joined association agreements, and direction of the development of their legislation is, of course, to the EU standards. Another tendency is that inside the Eurasia economic entity, we have a harmonization, specific harmonization, but at the same time, mostly all the countries of Eurasia bloc also have an agreement with European Union, and maybe in some small pieces of legislation, they also take into attention EU developments. So I think that it's very important for our countries to follow the best European practice. At the same time, we have some challenges for us, because if we speak that we should implement only what we have in association agreements, these are only some parts of the provisions from the EU directives and regulations. And of course, it's tricky and challenging whether such implementation could be effective, because in reality, EU member states, they take into consideration all the acquis communautaire, including decisions of EU Court of Justice, including also national practice and so on. So from my point of view, if we would like at the countries joining association agreement to have an effective implementation of EU legal acts, we should also take into consideration all other sources of EU law, and that's quite a big and not so easy task, and also it should be jointly initiated and operated from my point of view from the side of governments of our countries and the European Commission. That's first. Second, I would like to inform that in 1993, and it was 26 years ago, and also so long ago, Ukrainian adopted a law on copyright and related rights, and in this law, it was fully implemented the EU directive on protection of computer program. So it means that 26 years in Ukrainian, we have quite a modern basis for development of information technologies, and also some later, in some years, we implemented the provisions of WIPO copyright treaty concerning databases, copyright protection of databases. So I would like to say that the basis for protection in Ukraine for the development of communication technology is quite internationally harmonized. Well, and the last, I would like to say that really this tremendous and very interesting and exciting work with the strategy. So we hope that soon it will be in English and you will have a look at this strategy. It was initiated by the Minister of Economy. It was initiated by the National Office of Intellectual Property. We have there some provisions, some directions connecting with digital technologies and digital economy. And in the world in our legislation, and we will work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri. Maybe better version, but almost final version, we can of course share with our colleagues from European Union and also with others. Definitely it will be available public. In terms of particularities of IT when it comes to copyrightability, Olena, from your experience, I would appreciate if you comment on the specifics of implementation of this piece of legislation when it comes to copyright and in IT. How you see our, let's say, improvement of our legislation, take into account that our comprehensive so-called copyright law, which are now under elaboration, and I expect it submission to the parliament in upcoming months, I would say. Do you think we have, let's say, incorporated in this draft legislation everything from, let's say, from best European practice and best from, let's say, scientific approach? What would you, Перепрошую, може треба було це українською.
Дякую,
Я думаю, ви зловили мою
да.
думку. Да.
Дякую, пане Валерію, щиро вітаю. Дозвольте мені, я все-таки буду українською мовою, аби не своїм акцентом вас не вразити. Оскільки німкеня. Я наразі хочу звернути увагу, трохи розширити те, що мені пан Жалдек запропонував тематику моєї відповіді. І зазначити, що наразі якраз під егідою Міністерства економічного розвитку, торгівлі і сільського господарства майже підготовлений проєкт, яким вносяться зміни до нашого законодавства про авторське право і суміжні права. В якому наразі ми спробували відобразити якраз європейські практики. Ми спеціально проводили зустріч з європейськими експертами. Остання була в вересні місяці цього року, так? Для того, щоб якраз спробувати ці проблемні моменти, які пов'язані з правовою охороною об'єктів авторського права і особливо суміжних прав, ми могли би врахувати на поточний момент. Говорячи про сферу IT, звичайно, в Україні в першу чергу ми говоримо про авторську правову охорону. І саме вона використовується найбільше. Однак в Україні окрему увагу приділяється і питанням патентної охорони. Тому що і апаратна, і програмна частини комп'ютерних технологій, якщо вони відповідають критеріям правової охорони патентним правом, вони можуть охоронятися. Наразі в нас виникають питання щодо, наприклад, охорони бізнес-методів, які не відносяться до таких об'єктів. І пан Капіце зараз згадував стратегію розвитку сфери інтелектуальної власності. Наразі вона завтра буде презентуватися, її майже фінальна версія на Innovation Market. Ми отримали позитивну оцінку WIPO. І там, звичайно, щодо комп'ютерних програм наголошено на, умовно, на практиці авторсько-правової охорони для неї. Але ми також звернули увагу на перспективи штучного інтелекту як об'єкту, який може співвідноситися з IP. І допоки в нас є два напрями по декілька напрямів по штучному інтелекту в стратегії. З одного боку, це використання його можливості при патентних пошуках. З іншої сторони, наразі ми зараз вивчаємо питання, яким чином можна забезпечити винагороду розробникам комп'ютерних програм, в результаті яких штучний інтелект створює якісь нові об'єкти. І я хочу відзначити, що зараз на базі інституту, який я очолюю, Інституту інтелектуальної власності Академії правових наук України, розроблені пропозиції, з якими будемо виходити на обговорення. Щодо можливості застосування механізмами sui generis, і виплатою розробникам таких програм, в результаті яких штучний інтелект створює якісь нові об'єкти, закріплення за ними суто майнових прав, і ми пропонуємо термін охорони до 25 років. Для нас дуже корисним є досвід Європейського Союзу в цьому сенсі, і ті підходи, які є наразі і на рівні позиції Європейської комісії, і умовно перспектив охорони і механізмами авторського права і патентного права в перспективі тих об'єктів, які створюються штучним інтелектом. І в цьому сенсі ми звертаємо увагу на оновлення, на внесення зміни щодо настанов щодо експертизи в Європейському патентному відомстві. Там в листопаді, от зараз таки цього року, там були частково змінені положення щодо видів претензій, стаття 84 формальні вимоги. Фактично, які стосуються винаходів, створених комп'ютерними технологіями. І також окремо я хочу поставити акцент, трохи інший, в частині удосконалення захисту прав в Україні. В Україні з 19 березня 2019 року в чинність вступила політика розгляду доменних спорів у домені UA. І наразі наш адміністратор домену верхнього рівня UA, наш хостмастер, він підписав з ВАЙПу угоду, згідно з якою центр ВАЙПу з арбітражу і посередництва визначений єдиним органом, який наразі уповноважений розглядати спори, що стосуються приватних доменних імен другого рівня у домені UA на основі політики UA-DRP. Ось вам. Угу.
which the IPR arbitration mechanism is considered the only mechanism for resolving the disputes regarding the second level domain names according to the UDPR procedure.
Наразі, враховуючи наші зміни щодо відповідальності провайдерів, які були внесені в авторське законодавство,
And we have to take into account our amendments regarding the responsibility of providers, domain names,
в 17-му році.
were adopted in the year 17.
Ми вважаємо це одним із кроків, спрямованих на удосконалення процедур захисту прав інтелектуальної власності, пов'язаних з IT.
We consider it to be one of the steps to improve the process of intellectual property protection in the sphere of IT.
Ну і в даному випадку трохи ширше ми на це дивимося, і з інтернетом в тому числі в широкому розумінні.
We are trying to look at it from the wider perspective, taking into account internet.
Наразі зі змінами процесуального законодавства, матеріального законодавства в сфері IP, яка зараз відбувається,
And we have also amendments in the procedural law and the material law regarding the intellectual property. They are underway.
інституційною реформою в сфері інтелектуальної власності.
There is an institutional reform underway in the sphere of intellectual property as well.
І ми все-таки сподіваємося, що в наступному році запровадженням IP-суду
And we hope that in the next year, after the IP court starts its work,
щодо якого зараз якраз пані Марія трохи більше зможе сказати,
Maria will be talking about it more in detail.
проведенням політики щодо популяризації альтернативних способів захисту прав, зокрема тої ж самої медіації.
We're trying to popularize alternative ways of property protection, including mediation.
Ми вважаємо, що ці кроки в сукупності дозволять істотно підвищити рівень захисту, ефективність захисту і, в принципі, сприяти привабливості України як країни, що забезпечує захист власності, в тому числі інтелектуальної власності.
I think that all those steps will improve the level of protection, the effectiveness of protection, and it will improve the attractiveness of Ukraine as a country where the intellectual property rights are protected on an appropriate level.
І я приношу вибачення за те, що трохи перебрала часу.
I'm sorry for taking too much time.
Дозвольте мені скористатися можливістю і висловити глибоку подяку проєкту Квін-Мері і британському уряду
I would like to use this opportunity to thank to the Queen Mary Project and the British government
за ці зусилля, які нами спільно прикладаються за ці 2 роки з метою все-таки, щоб IP-суд в Україні почав працювати.
for all those efforts that have been put on during those last 2 years to make the IP card work.
Оскільки в контексті сьогоднішнього форуму ми вважаємо, що цей суд значно зможе покращити рівень захисту для сфери IT.
Because in the context of today's forum, we believe that this court will be able to drastically improve the protection of intellectual property rights in Ukraine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena. I also would like to join and to thank to the government of United Kingdom for their, I would say, constant positive, let's say, approach, enthusiastic approach to reform of, in general, system of intellectual property in Ukraine. You know that our draft law on so-called national system on improvement of national system on intellectual property 2255 was also prepared in the framework of our mutual project between the government of Ukraine and the government of United Kingdom, and was implemented by the company, international company PricewaterhouseCoopers, and there were numbers of experts, including a representative of Georgian patent office, SAC-Patenti, and thank you for that as well. We have been preparing our IP strategy together with Ukrainian stakeholders, and the main and chief expert and facilitator from WIPO was also former British head of UK Patent Office, Ron Marchand, and we appreciate his contribution to preparing our IP strategy. So you see how United Kingdom government is assisting us in providing technical assistance and not only, and advises on how to improve our IP system. Manana, I would like to hear your approach, your experience. How come you actually managed to jump from the regional group, from post-Soviet Union, CIS countries to SEPS countries, and how it helped also to you to development of your legislation, your experience in establishing IP office, in establishing also system of CMO, whether you faced with such a resistance in your country like we actually did. Please, the floor is yours, and just in general explain your experience and the advantages of SEPS group. It's most interesting question for us, because we have already actually announced that we are leaving within WIPO, this former CIS countries group, and we announced our wish to join SEPS groups, but because of different political issues, one of the member states of this regional group is blocking our entrance and joining this SEPS group. Does it help you to be in this group? Please.
So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on this forum. It was very interesting and fascinating, and I think the issue discussed is really very problematic and very actual. As for Georgian IP system and our experience, I will start with with our experience. So with changing of our group actually in WIPO. As you know, it happened in 2016. Actually, we also didn't expect it that it might become so soon that we actually will be allowed to move to the Central European and Baltic States group, because I think the main issue was that we are the associated member of the European Union, future member, let's say, of the European Union, and our direction regarding the legislation, regarding the policy, regarding the political system, and all these years we've been harmonizing and working within the framework of the association agreement with the European Union and the CFTA agreement on the harmonization of our system, and so our future plan is becoming the member of the European Union. And one of our argument, actually one of our I think reason why we actually wanted to become the member of the SEPS group is that this is the platform actually when we can actually together with the European Union countries work hand by hand, I mean, on the very crucial and actual problematic issues in the IP globally, not only on the country system, but I mean regionally and globally. And it also could gave us the opportunity, as I mentioned, that so we can share the experience, and this is really very good platform to cooperate with these countries, actually, which are the most of them are, you know, the eastern part of the European Union, who has the more or less the same history, same traditions, same I mean the route to the European Union, and they have a good memory of all this history, and it's really beneficiary for our country. And you know, in 2017 we also were the coordinator of the group. Our colleague Anna Gubechia was the coordinator. She did a really very good job, which was appreciated by all members of SEPS, and we are happy that she's now the first representative of Georgia in World Intellectual Property Organization as a staff member now. So to start with the beginning, I don't want to take too much time, but so shortly I would like to describe the system of the IP office. It was established more than I think now it's been 28 years, so it was 28 years now. And it's from the beginning it was independent, self-financed legal entity of public law, and we are accountable, our chairman is accountable before the Prime Minister, and actually our core function are the registration of all IP objects, and we are dealing of all IP objects. It's not disseminated with different agencies, and I think this is a very good experience because as a policy maker in this field, this really gives us opportunity to be more efficient and to act in different directions more efficiently, and take in the decision-making process, and in providing some assistance regarding the protection and development of IP system in country. Sorry. So, actually, we had now we have our action plan. So, as a policy-making agency, we had to make some, let's say, priorities in our everyday activities. You know that we have established this IP training center of Sakpatenti, which aims to raise the public awareness in different and providing the training for different target groups in the country. Also the further development and improvement of examination of industrial property subject matters, which is also a very important task. Drafting the legislative amendments, promotion of innovation activities, development of branding system, development of public publishing activity, and adopting of the IP strategy. Actually, all these activities are provided by our IP strategy. All started actually by the visit of the Mr. Francis Gary in 2015, when we had the memorandum, and within this memorandum, drafting of IP strategy was my main, let's say, task. And again, so it provided all this task that was that I mentioned in previous slides. So the objective is the raising awareness on the IP issues, and in this regard, regarding the IP Training Center, I would like to mention that we had the very efficient collaboration with WIPO Academy, and we have actually had the different projects with them. One of them was TOT, training of the Sakpatenti staff members as the trainers, and now they are certified trainers who can actually provide and take part not only in national training activities, but as well as on the activities which are provided by the WIPO Academy. And one of them is that in Georgia, it's been a third time this year that we were providing professional development project for the program for geographical indications, and more than I think it was attended by the representative of 13 or 14 countries, and for the government officials who are dealing with the geographical indications all over the world. And I think it's a very good experience for us that from actually accumulation of the knowledge, now we are on the next step, the dissemination and sharing our knowledge in this field. And also, again, our trainers who were actually trained by the WIPO were together with WIPO representatives and WIPO experts were participating in this course. Also, the training center's activities, and so we, I think I should mention that we translated and customized DL 101, which is the let's say course on IP, the common course, and it's available on Georgian now, and it's also fourth time that we are now providing this for, and everybody, it's for free, and everybody can participate in this project. So we also have different projects regarding the SMEs to raise their activities, raise their knowledge, and to help them actually to realize what is their the assets are which they are actually creating and how they can protect it. And then the next objective is facilitation and commercialization of research results and universities and research institutions. Actually, we started to create the policy guidelines for universities. I cannot say that it's the process is very easy and every university is very interesting, but together with the government support and with different tools when they oblige from different standards of the education to have this kind of guidelines, the interest from the universities actually to have this kind of guidelines actually raised. We also, as far as in Georgia, actually, number of patents and the innovations and the innovation activity is still a very challenging issue. We are providing free of charge for every interesting person the free of charge the search for and regarding the state of arts of the innovations and the which they actually own in order to facilitate and make more efficient their work. One of the priorities of our government is development of the GI system, and in this regard, as for the raising awareness, I also already mentioned the activities of the training center. Now we have the very big project, twinning project, financed by the EU, with together with the consortium Italy and France, who are the most, let's say, experienced country in Europe regarding where actually they are the country of birthplace of the appellation of origin of geographical indication, and together with them now we are working on all these issues to further develop of GI system in Georgia regarding the control system, creation of the control system, regarding the changing the legislative amendments to harmonize not only with the European but as well as Geneva Act. Because we are supporters of the Geneva Act, Geneva Act, and so we hope that in the future we will join this and we will sign this agreement. Also, I think. I think one of the major activities is the creation of the IP infringement body, which actually consolidate every single entity who is dealing with the enforcement in Georgia regarding the intellectual property. And this is very good tool because we have the opportunity to gather these government entities and to create some kind of, let's say, strategy regarding the enforcement issues and discuss with them all the issues that are come to us from the private sector. We also have this very good platform every year together with the support of US. We are providing the Georgia, the conference, Georgia Against Counterfeit, which is a very good actually platform for the private and public entity sector to sit together on one in one space and to discuss all the problematic issues and actually developments which is happening regarding the enforcement in Georgia. As for the internet, actually, I must say that according to the association agreement, Georgia has the obligation to have this ISP liability legislation, which actually we drafted several years ago, but it's actually linked to the e-commerce legislation. And as far as it's under the Ministry of the Economy, we are waiting for this law to be amended. And after that, actually, this draft, which which also now is agreed with the private sector as well, will be also enforced, and we hope that this will really regulate these challenging issues regarding the infringement of IP rights in the internet in Georgia, because in every direction, when we are looking at the statistical data provided by several organizations which are dealing actually in the enforcement issues on the market, we have very good improvement. But if you look at the internet, it's still, it's still a very challenging issue, and I think 19% of the content in the internet now in Georgia is really counterfeited, and that's why it's pirated, and that's why it's very crucial to have this legislation as soon as it will be possible. And of course, one of our main direction is to raise the capacity building within the IP office, because it is very important to have the very high standard of examiners and examination decisions, not only in trademark, but as well as in the direction of the patent examiners. And in this regard, we will sign. We are about to signing the agreement with EUIPO, which provide actually the translation of the guidelines of the trademark and design and customization on Georgian language. When we will have when our examiners will be obliged to actually to take these guidelines and to make their decisions based on the experience of EU. As for the patent examiners, we actually signed a couple of days ago the validation agreement with the European Patent Office, and within this validation agreement, actually EPO is obliged to provide some kind of technical assistance, and we also hope that this will raise the knowledge and the level of our examiners. And so the next step is identification of relevant stakeholders for governmental and private sector in order to improve a different direction in our IP system. And as far as actually the IP strategy is in place, and we are actually realizing this. We are realizing this strategy, but still it's not adopted on an official level, but it's in the process, and actually the fields that are provided by the strategy are we actually already started to implement them. Of course, we are now working on the short and medium term action plans, and we also think that regional strategy on IP is also a very important thing, because there are a number of issues which might be regulated and might be solved on a regional base. It might be again the enforcement issues, the border measure things, and I think that's for countries like Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova, and other countries, there are still a lot of room to cooperate and to act together in order to achieve more and higher standards in the protection of intellectual property. And sorry for taking and being too long.
Thank you, Anana. So, Jana, have you noticed the statement from the representative of SAC Patente about almost their readiness to join the European Union?
Yeah. I was expecting that you would make the same comment.
That's what. Yeah, well, you are free to comment on that, and what are your evaluation when it comes to Ukrainian readiness to join the European Union in terms of IPR, at least?
In terms of IPR, I think it's work in progress. No, actually, when I was preparing for my presentation based on what the organizers asked, I thought that my presentation should be also on the benefits of IPR in general, how we see it from the EU perspective. And then to tell a bit more about what we do with the Eastern Partnership countries. But I think I would be preaching to the converted, because you know and you follow up very closely on what you are doing in your country. So maybe I can just very briefly what I wanted to say, but then I would skip the last part of my presentation, where I was planning to talk about IT and how the IT fits into the IPR things. And maybe more interestingly, I have some questions to you which come to my mind when you were speaking. So if that's okay for you, I would be less structured than I planned. When you look at the importance of the IPR, I think one of the clear facts is that IP is an important driver of economics, and based on the survey which the European Patent Office did jointly with the EU Intellectual Property Office in September this year, so it's relatively recent, we see that over 50% of the industries are IP intensive. So I think that also explains why we pay so much attention to IP overall, and why we have this session, and why we have so many people who really follow very closely the developments. In terms of GDP, it is over 45 or around 45%, and it corresponds to 6.6 trillion annually. So again, just talking from the numbers, you can see that this is really far-reaching. In terms of job creation, it is corresponding to 40% of all jobs in the EU, either directly or indirectly, and that's a huge number, 84 million out of the EU jobs. Again, imports, big impact on trading goods. 80% of EU imports and 82% of exports are generated by the IP industries. And what is quite interesting, actually, and this is, I think, one of the things that can then be a good argument to explain to people who sometimes do not understand why you actually care about IP, that based on the survey, the industries who are IP intensive, they have 47 premium to the wages of their employees. So the people working in IP intensive industries actually gain better salaries. So I think this is one of the argument people might understand quite easily. When we look at the top 20 industries, so out of the industries which we had before, you have the top 20. They are actually covering the half of the share which we discussed before. So they account for 3.3 trillion of the EU GDP. And the sectors are also listed. You see real estate, machinery, business, consulting, financial services, IT. So quite obvious on the list. Telecoms, pharmaceutical, and sports. I think this is, again, I mean, for you all nothing that you would not know. The IP would support investment, increase, promote creativity, improve business climate, protect quality. And I think this also is a reason why we are so much working with the countries like Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and all the others. So I think this we already covered in before, so I don't need to really elaborate on this. It's just here a concrete example how the IT is sort of factored in the work or under the agreements which we are having with the Eastern Partnership countries. And my question came, I mean, in this context, because I wonder, in your day-to-day context or in your work, what is your assessment of the situation in the IT? Where would the biggest interest come? I mean, for the IT guys, when they talk to you, when they approach you, would that fall rather in the copyright sphere, or would that be somewhere else in the trademarks? Or I just don't, I would like to get a sense of you, where do you think is the biggest relevance from your experience? So I think with that, I maybe can glance through that. Yeah, thank you, Sophie. I was planned to be short anyway. But I have, on these questions again, I wonder also if, for example, Ukraine, based on what you heard from Georgia, do you have any lessons learned or any experience that you could potentially learn, because you're also a country that has the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, so there are some similarities which you are supposed to take over in your work. So is there something that you already saw that came as a good inspiration? So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana, for your presentation and for your question. From my approach, from my point of view, see, those IT guys, most often just their position is do not touch us from the government, and we will not claim on anything. You know, this is like a tax paying, but from other side, of course, they are claiming on their copyright protection mostly, and from day-to-day work, they are, of course, want their copyright is protected, and this is very good experience which I've heard from our Georgian colleague who was sharing experience with this coordination enforcement body. We probably know as well, we had one, which is IP Council, which was chaired by first Vice Prime Minister, Mr. Kyiv. And now, unfortunately, we don't have such a, let's say, high position as the first Vice Prime Minister. It might be a case that probably Mr. Fedorov, who is now chairing Vice Prime Minister on digitalization, and it might be a case that he would be interested to chair this council in terms of IT as well as in terms of protection of copyright in IT sphere. And this is, by the way, also a case when it comes to such a, let's say, shaming issue of unlicensed software use in state authorities. We still have some, and we cannot claim that we are, let's say, struggling with infringement of intellectual property at the same time using unlicensed software in our state authorities. So we can talk still about enforcement of intellectual property. This is, let's say, our I would say weakest part on when it comes to intellectual property reform in general. We of course rely and have many hopes when it comes to establishing intellectual property court, IP court. We know this also kind of saga with this institution. But you probably know that we decided not to wait in this regard and have tried and using this opportunity, we established this alternative dispute resolution mechanism together with WIPR, and we have already, as Ms. Orluk said about this UDRP procedure when it comes to domain name dispute resolution, and this is quite a positive experience from our point of view, and we have already some cases in that regard, and we are very happy with that. We also were considering and still considering implementing this procedure on alternative dispute resolution, kind of mediation, and in the actions and activity of our CMOs when they negotiate in tariffs, we also consider this might be an instrument, because this is for the time being right now we also faced with this let's say problem and issue that the negotiation between right holders and users are, let's say, quite difficult, and the last decision might be provided by court, but we can use let's say mediation in that regard. Also a case Maria, share us your feeling. How are you feeling about establishing an high intellectual property court?
Only optimistic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in this very distinguished gathering of experts from Ukraine and international experts. And I'm delighted to present our work on the IP court at Queen Mary University of London. As we all understand, the IT sector is particularly relied on IP protection, and the fact that in Ukraine we have mostly good legislation harmonized in most aspects with the European, according to European Association Agreement. The big gap is in the enforcement and in the quality of judiciary and ability to adjudicate according apply the law which exists in Ukraine. And therefore we have been analyzing international experience of specialized courts, and our project is funded by the British government, and I'm delighted that there were so many positive comments about the work that the British government is doing in Ukraine, and I will definitely send a message to the embassy and to the government to continue this work in collaboration with the European partners and European delegation. The British government is very much sharing the sentiment that the protection of the IP rights in Ukraine would be a driver for the innovative businesses, for SMEs, for the growth of economy. And for the IT sector in particular, we are looking at helping and creating opportunities for product-based IT sector. We know that we are very successful in outsourcing, and Ukraine has achieved significant results, and at this conference we hear about successes of Ukrainian IT industry. But what is missing is ability to create a product which can be protected, and the ability to attract investment in development of the new products and to commercialize them in Ukraine and overseas. And IP court and trust in ability to defend your rights in Ukraine, IP rights, is very much central to this ambition of Ukraine to become an IT center of technology in Europe and internationally. So I'd like to tell you about the work that we are doing at Queen Mary. This is a project that has been a result, in a way, of my dissertation as a PhD student at Queen Mary, when I have interviewed stakeholders and lawyers and businesses about what is needed in Ukraine. The answer was, we need a specialized intellectual property, and would there be a possibility to bring experts and advice on how to do that? And British University Queen Mary has supported this project, and British government has allocated funding to this, for which we are very grateful. And the project involves, first of all, is recommendations as to the legislative improvement for the new court, which is in the process of being established. And this is based on the experience of leading countries that have specialized courts, including, of course, the United Kingdom. We also look at the experience of our European friends and partners, Germany, France, Netherlands, and the US. In this exercise, we very much rely on the International Advisory Board that has been set up and involves leading judges from the countries that I've named, and including it is chaired. The board is chaired by the former president of the Supreme Court of the UK, Lord Neuberger, and involves senior Supreme Court judges from the UK and head of the IP court in the UK, and German federal judge, and appeal judge from Netherlands, and appeal judge from the United States. And all of this expertise is being brought to Ukraine to devise the rules and procedures according to which this court will be working. That's a first deliverable, and of course we also benefit from our Ukrainian members of the board, and Mrs. Lenarduk is part of the advisory board, for which we are grateful, and we have also senior judges from Ukraine who contribute to our work in order to make sure that the recommendations are not cut off from reality on the ground in Ukraine, and very much will be possible to implement them, and they will work effectively. And we have also undertaken consultations with lawyers, with businesses. We have presented our preliminary findings. This last week we had the project team, organizing presentations in Kyiv, Lviv and Kharkiv, where we had an opportunity to meet future judges of the candidates to the IP court, and were very impressed and interested in their feedback. Met with lawyers, and there is no question about why do we need an IP court. I think there is a general consensus in the business, professional, international community that there is very much a need for this. The question is why it's been so long and so difficult to set it up, and I'm sure Mr. Zoldak knows the reasons probably behind that. But judiciary and the executive. What we attempt to do, and what we have been doing for since the new government has taken office, to engage with them, with the President's office, with the Parliament, with the ministries, to talk to them, to gather their feedback about how committed they are. And so far we had very positive response. We met with Deputy Speaker of the Verkhovna Rada, Mr. Stefanchuk. We met with heads of the committees at the Parliament responsible for the IP rights. And the timeline, unfortunately, is not as quick as we were all hoping for, but there is a commitment to finalize the selection of the IP judges, we were told, in the first part of the 2020, and finalize the court will be hopefully set up by the end of 2020. So from our perspective, we would like to see the collaboration and effective exchange of ideas with the new government, how to implement those necessary changes for the court to start its work, as well as plan training program for judges. We know that the members, the candidates to the court that have been submitting their applications are mostly judges with little IP experience, but experienced judges. So the training for the new judges will be very essential, so that they have the knowledge how to apply the law in this technical field of intellectual property. And our hope is that this is going to be a success story, which we can then share with our partners and countries in the region, and very much hope that next year when we meet again, we'll talk about results, how this court has helped the innovative industries, including the IT, and what are the lessons learned and how we can share them with our partners. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Maria. So we are almost out of time, but maybe we will take some question from the participant of this discussion, or maybe someone want to share his experience when it comes to in use of, let's say, IT in intellectual property protection. Maybe Ignat, what would you your experience and your observation, how IT might be useful when it comes to protection of intellectual property rights?
Hello, I'm Ignat from the Ukrainian Association of Music Industry. Well, a couple of things. Before answering your question, I would like to endorse this message about the importance of IP court, because it would probably come as a surprise to many people that it was the letter from the music industry. It was the biggest recording companies of Ukraine, both representing international repertoire and Ukrainian repertoire, who sent a letter to the president. It was the first letter the industry sent to the president, and that letter was, when will we get the IP court? So just to reinforce the message. Of course, it is important for us because probably it will be up to IP court to help to set the final tariffs for collective management organizations and users and so on. And of course, the infringements of copyright, music copyright that is happening, ongoing. So that's one thing on the IP court. As for the IT sector and music or right holder sector, I would say that our wishes and expectations is that there will be clear rules, including in the new draft law, the new version of the copyright and related rights law, that will make the IT sector and music industry sector not foes but friends, because traditionally for many years these two sectors, they mostly were opponents, because technology companies, sometimes the copyright is the last thing on their mind. They just move fast and break things, and then they think, okay, how to make sure that we're not swamped by the lawsuits from the right holders. Let's come with some kind of deal. And our message is that it is much better and much less painful for everybody if the IT sector takes into account not only the IPR that they own, but also the IPR that they build their businesses on. And that's, of course, including music and audiovisual film sector. So that's something, and also, of course, we sometimes rely on the information from the IT companies that become either the platforms or the holders of the copyright protected material, and although they serve as the intermediary, sometimes this is kind of vague gray area, because they are not really passive intermediaries. Sometimes they are kind of active intermediaries, and in this way, again, they have to respect the IP of other sectors. So that's very quickly. I don't want to take all the time left. Maybe somebody else wants to speak.
Okay, then let's ask our. Yes, please.
I will just add regarding the IT system, from the different angle. I mean, it is very important from the perspective of IP office and the governmental sector who is dealing with IP office, to have a high standard services, including the IT system and the integration of all databases, not only in the national field, but as well as other international databases. I would like to mention that we had a very successful project regarding the integration of our databases with UIPO tools like TMView, DesignView, also with different WIPO databases like Design Class, MGS, and etc., which is also very important because it really simplified the obtaining of the rights and on the IP objects, not only for national people, but as well as for foreigners who would like to obtain rights on, for instance, in Ukraine or in Georgia, and vice versa. If some nationals would like to have their rights extended not only their territory, but as well as receiving other more international protection protection, they also can use based on this integrated base, which also provide their national languages, which is, I think, very important. And also, I think we should take this into account as well.
Thank you for that comment, Manon. So do we have anyone who wants to share experience, to ask questions to the speakers? So if not, then I will just quickly sum up on what we are now focusing on within the government, except those stuff which has been already said. IPR record, because this is not really our responsibility. As colleagues from scientific side already a couple of times mentioned, we are now finalizing our IP strategy. We have draft law, so-called 2255, which is aimed to establish finally our IP office, so-called one-stop shop, which will be responsible for patents and copyrights and SAC Patenti, which is very good experience. We are also focusing on patent law, and which is already registered in the parliament, as well as trademark law, which is also already in the parliament. We have already two so-called Ukraine EU obligations implemented. This is semiconductors and GI, and we are on a final stage with preparing legislation on copyright. This is we call it comprehensive draft law on copyright and related rights, which is basically to be released in nearest 1 or 2 weeks, I hope so. So this is our plans for upcoming, let's say, months, and then we are to implement our IP strategy, which is comprehensive and quite a significant document, which was drafted by all stakeholders involved in this process in Ukraine, and also with the support of international experts and IPO. So if there is no questions, I would propose to close our session, if you do not mind. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then